So I like Ben 10. Okay, it's not a masterpiece or anything, but I've been watching it for as long as I can remember. I grew up with it. I'm pretty certain that my love for the show is 100% nostalgia based, but at least I had a reason to like it, unlike everyone who had to grow up watching the reboot. So this movie is a live action adaptation of a cartoon that was a soft reboot of another cartoon, which also had a live action movie made about it. So let's just pop the disc in here and see what we're dealing with. That was only 1 hour. I could have sworn it was about 5. That movie was so bad that it broke my TV and maybe I had to replace it with this piece of shit behind me. That's been behind me for this entire video. It's almost as though I filmed those previous clips months ago, and I'm only now getting around to actually making this video. But anyway, I think it's about time we talk about how bad this film really is. So first of all, I just want to talk about the title, Alien Swarm, suggesting that there's some grand swarm of aliens. But I'm not sure anyone was really expecting a swarm of nanochips. That's a really stupid name. Who the fuck came up with that? Jesus Christ. When you say a swarm of aliens, you expect something on a bit of a larger scale. So this was a bit of a dickish move in my opinion. And Ben 10? More like Ben 3, because that's how many aliens are actually in this film. And they all somehow look like complete shit. First you got this one, and then there's this piece of shit. And then what the fuck is this? But that's just nitpicking, some people might say. You know, how the movie looks, the title of the film, it's just nitpicking. So let's move into the plot. So this girl Eleanor comes out of nowhere during some drug deal and claims to know Ben and the others. Then there's a really long exposition scene where we learn that her dad was the one who created these microchips, and somehow they fuck with his mind and make him bad. I don't know. Then Ben decides to go completely fucking insane and begins trusting Eleanor way too much, considering they haven't spoken in years and her father's a criminal, for God's sake. You would think he'd be a little smarter than to trust her, but nothing bad ever comes of this, of course. It just all works out somehow, and she was telling the 100% absolute truth the entire time. But Max, however, Ben's grandfather, becomes a giant asshole and acts like a dick throughout the entire movie. Except for at the end of the film though, when he starts acting nice again for no reason. Because at the end of the film everything needs to be resolved. That's just how movies work, right? There can't be any remaining conflict or any reason for characters to change their outlook on things. People just forgive. But anyway, the gang get into an argument. Oh no! They make up in like 10 minutes. And then they just start working together again to defeat the big bad that no one cares about. There is no story here. It's as generic as it can get. But this scene, the final scene, the actual fight scene, I mean, it's probably my favourite of the whole film. Because unlike the rest, this scene manages to keep a theme. It has a very specific feel to it, and it's very nostalgic for me, and many others. Because it reminds me of when I was a kid, and I spent all those hours playing the Ben 10 game for the PS2. The final scene looks just like that game. I'm not even joking. It looks like that game, but if it was a little less pixelated, because that game was on the PS2. Which, I guess, brings me to my second point, the special effects. So just a minute ago I mentioned the 3 aliens of this film, and how they all look terrible. Fucking Nintendo characters managed to look more realistic. And because of this, the movie is really, really dark. But no, the film's not dark with its themes. Instead, the film is actually really dark to hide how awful it looks. Because the movie relies quite heavily on CGI, and it all looks so shitty that they really had no choice but to make it this dark. Even with that spiky ball thing that chases them around, that they for some reason kept in the film. I don't know why they would include that. It was a really bad scene. The film would have benefited from cutting it out, because not for a single second does that ball look good, and it's just a ball with spikes. They couldn't even get that right. But because this is a TV movie with a relatively small budget, and I think I remember reading somewhere that it was filmed in just a couple weeks.
Set and offset, we were there for just over 5 weeks.
But considering that this is a TV movie about a relatively small TV show, that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. I thought the only way to properly critique it would be to compare it to another film based off the exact same relatively unknown TV show with an even smaller budget. I haven't watched this film since I was about 10 years old, so I genuinely have no idea what to expect here. It can't really be worse than the one we just watched, so let's just see how it compares. Alright, so obviously it's not perfect or anything. It's just after watching this over and over again, it's such a breath of fresh air. So I'm too lazy to write a script for this part, so I'm just going to read off my notes that I wrote when watching the film. Obviously I can't fairly compare the special effects and the CGI between these films, because I have to use this shitty fucking thing as a replacement temporarily. And I genuinely just finished watching this film for the first time in about 6 years, so obviously my opinion is going to be a little jaded, considering my expectations were so low for this film. The first thing I liked was that you can actually place this in the timeline of the story. With Alien Swarm, you just kind of have to guess as to when it takes place. I think it would be in the middle of the Alien Force TV show somewhere, but I genuinely don't know. Whereas with this, it's very obvious because they reference the fact multiple times that it's the end of summer, and the original show takes place during summer. One thing I did notice though was that the CGI did clearly get a lot worse as time went on. I mean, the first scene with Heat Blast looked not awful, but quite bad. Then there's the grey matter scene, which I actually really like, and it doesn't look awful, it looks pretty good. It's not good by today's standards, but for 2007, was it? The acting was actually somehow better in this film as well. I don't know how they managed to pull that off. Most of the film is just children, whereas in the new one, they're all like adults who don't look like teenagers pretending to be teenagers. Which is another point, the actors actually look like the characters they're trying to play. They don't look as though they're completely different people entirely. They actually look like the people in the cartoon. There was actually quite a lot of character growth, development, and actual story in this film as well, whereas in the other, there really wasn't in the Alien Swarm one. There really wasn't that much character development. I actually found the villain of this film to be quite interesting as well. Eon. I actually found the character to be quite interesting, and the spoiler alert, but the twist at the end when he turns out to be Ben but from the future, it was a bit of a cheesy plot twist. My expectations are really low here, but it was something at least. Another thing I would also really quickly like to point out is that if we quickly go back to Alien Swarm, the music is awful. I cannot stress how awful the music is for that film. My god. I never actually got around to talking about it because I guess I forgot. But my god, do those songs suck. And, you know, they don't remind you of the original show or anything. They don't set up any kind of theme or tension or add to the plot in any way. There is no fucking plot. I mean, listening to the original Alien Force, the TV show soundtrack, and then listening to the soundtrack from this film, you can tell there is no connection there. There's just nothing. I swear it's not even made by the same people. I haven't looked this up, but if it was made by the same people, I'd genuinely be surprised. Whereas with the first film, the one that we just watched, Race Against Time I think it's called, the soundtrack seems to be heavily inspired by the original. I really like that because it creates a very familiar theme that, despite it being live action and it sounding different, it has a very different sound. I can't really explain it. I'm not much of a music guy, honestly. I don't really know anything about music, but despite it having a different sound, it very clearly is inspired by the original soundtrack from the show. It provides a sense of familiarity and helps you make that link between the original show and this live action adaptation. Also, quickly before I end this video, there's one last thing I would like to mention, and that's just the design of the Omnitrix itself. I feel like that's pretty crucial in the storytelling of this, considering the entire story is supposed to be surrounded around that. And in Alien Swarm, it looks bad. It looks so bad. Like, it looks like this toy that I used at the beginning of this video. I don't know how to describe it, it just looks cheap and like a toy. It doesn't look good. Whereas in Race Against Time, it actually looks like a piece of technology. I remember when I was a child, those little white bits that go around. I never even considered those being pipes. I just, fuck's sake, I never thought to think of those as like pipes that go around it. But this adaptation does a great job of showing that that's most likely what it's supposed to be. I don't know what it is. I think it's the little bits of detail that they add to it. I can't say specifically. I'll try and put an image up or something. I think it's very clear that a lot more time and effort was put into designing the prop for Race Against Time than what was put into making the one for Alien Swarm. It's very clear that they didn't really care that much, and they just tried to, just make it look like the show, exactly like the show. Improve on the design in no way whatsoever, just make it look like a cheap plasticky version of that. It'll be fine. But I think how that specific prop looks has much more importance than people realise, because when it looks bad, it can make entire scenes look bad. I'm just trying to go over this in my head, and this last bit where I'm comparing the two seems a little all over the place. Maybe it'll be better when I've edited it, but I didn't write a script for this part, so I don't really know what to say. If you did happen to watch all the way to the end of this video though, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. You have absolutely no idea how long I've been working on this video. I think I started working on this back in, I'm pretty sure it was just after summer of 2019. Obviously I spent a few months not working on it, just because I was busy doing other stuff, but I still did spend a long time working on this video. So if you could subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And I mean, I have no idea how long this video is. I have uncut audio right next to me here, and it says it's about 1 hour and 10 minutes long. I know the final product won't be that long, but still, if you manage to watch to the end, I would really appreciate subscribing. I plan to do a lot more videos, much more similar to this one, and hopefully I'll be able to upload a lot more frequently from now on. I do plan to anyway. Hopefully for my next video I'll have a much better second half as well. I'll probably end up scripting the whole thing instead of just half, because I won't be comparing it to a movie I just saw.